You mentioned something that was super interesting that younger advisors are increasingly expected to contribute to organic growth. Like you said earlier, everyone's looking for the rainmaker, but many haven't developed the confidence or conversational skills to do it effectively. I can't wait to introduce you to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the Know Me podcast where the future of financial advice starts with discovery. We're bringing you candid conversations with top industry leaders, innovators, and behavioral finance experts, exploring how wealth managers can deepen client relationships, personalize advice at scale, and drive real business growth. Because clients don't just want financial plans, they want to feel understood. They want to be known. Stay tuned, subscribe, and get ready to transform the way you connect with clients. Know Me, transforming discovery into growth. Hello, and today we are joined by one of the most influential thinkers in the history of the RIA industry, Mark Tibergien. Mark is a nationally recognized authority on wealth management, strategy, succession, and growth within wealth management. He's spent more than a decade as the CEO of Pershing Advisor Solutions, where he helped transform the firm into one of the top RIA custodial platforms in the country. He grew assets under custody from about 40 billion to more than 800 billion during his tenure. Before Pershing, Mark built the wealth management consulting practice at Moss Adams into one of the industry's leading advisory groups, pioneering benchmarking studies, compensation research, and some of the earliest frameworks around valuing and scaling advisory firms. He's also authored several foundational books for the profession, including Practice Made More Perfect, How to Value, Buy, or Sell a Financial Advisory Practice, and The Enduring Advisory Firm. Today, Mark serves as an advisor in residence for Ernst & Young's Wealth and Asset Management Group, and he's an independent director at Patstone and advises several firms shaping the future of wealth management. But what makes Mark especially compelling is that he spent decades studying not just how advisory firms grow, but how advisors evolve themselves. From succession planning and ensemble teams to advisor identity, human connection, and the future of client engagement, Mark has consistently been ahead of where the industry is going. Mark, I'm so honored that you're here. Welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
Great. Thank you, Marley. Appreciate the invitation.
It's been wonderful to build a bit of a relationship with you. We probably came across each other first when I was running partnerships at Gemstep and work very, very closely with the Pershing team. And I've been delighted to get to know you a bit more as I launch Nomi. We always start our podcast with one question, and that is what excites you about the moment that we're in right now with respect to the future of wealth management?
Well, I think the moment we have right now is the same moment we've had for every decade I've been around this business, and that it is going through profound change. And there are several catalysts for it. One, probably most significant, is there's an oversupply of clients and an undersupply of people to provide advice. That presents both an opportunity and a challenge. Two, we continue to see advancements in technology that either refine the client experience, the advisor experience, or the efficiency and effectiveness of a business. Three, I think that what we're seeing is this evolution from practice to business to enterprise. And so the combination of these three forces will probably result in a truly transformed business segment in wealth management going forward.
You've seen so much of how the industry has changed, and I think even driven quite a lot of that change, and have been very close to almost every evolution in the RIA industry, from solo practitioners, professionally managed firms, today's consolidators and aggregators. You just referenced that there is kind of a change underway as it relates to enterprise. What do you feel that most firms still misunderstand? And I would even caveat that with you've probably seen what they've misunderstood all along about our industry and growth. What can you share from that experience?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that the segment of wealth management that the registered investment advisor represents really went through a big change back in the 70s when RIAs were primarily institutional money managers to where they became more retail oriented. And this is thanks in part to the evolution of the custodians and providing a platform for these firms. But back then, it was very much a lifestyle business, and it changed over the last several decades into something more substantive. But clearly, when an industry is comprised of professional technicians, it tends not to develop its management muscle as much as one would like to see. It's probably like every other industry where the entrepreneur has never dreamed of owning a business. They dreamed of serving their clients. And so, as we see this evolution right now, it's probably the part of it that is the most difficult to get one's arms around, and that's that notion of how do you create truly professional management within a business that's making this change from entrepreneurship to enterprise.
And when you say like that big challenge is evolving from entrepreneurship to enterprise, and you pair that with what are they facing? What are the challenges that are holding them back from that evolution? And, the stats that we hear that median growth is pretty poor. It's around 5% and top firms are closer to 12%. But we're not talking about exponential growth here. And a lot of the growth that we've seen in our the research come out has just been a result of market movement and M&A. So it's this may be very condescending to say it's paper pushing and kind of moving people from one umbrella to another. But is it actually net new assets that's not attributable to market change, or where are the net new assets? So when you think about that change from entrepreneurship to enterprise, what do you see there is the challenge, and what separates the winners from those that are potentially not going to be the winners?
It's an interesting life cycle development in the business in that people go from surviving the start of a business to growing a business in an unmanaged way to settling into a lifestyle in a business that seems to be working, and now recognizing that they have adopted a lot of overhead, a lot of expenses, a lot of demands on their attention, and clients that are dead and dying. And so they have to rethink this whole growth mode. And I think to your point, organic growth is probably the most chronic uh, malady that exists within the profession today. And some of it is due to lack of capacity. Some of it is being unsure as to how do you help others to build the brand of the business because it's no longer dependent on the founder as it was in the beginning. And the other is the way in which one connects with clients. And so there has been a tendency, and many firms still lean into this, is to use performance as the basis on which to position oneself. But it's truly hard to differentiate on performance alone because it's hard to be the performance leader year in and year out, and whether that even makes a difference to clients. So the question now is how do advisory firms connect on a human and emotional level with prospects and clients? How do they recognize this transition from one generation to the other, or even from one spouse to the other? So we see these whole changes that are occurring, and I think that we have a lot of factors that are inhibiting the growth of firms, but it's a chronic issue that has to be addressed in a very direct and meaningful way.
I think our listeners now understand like why I'm so grateful that we connected, because the themes you just touched on are the themes that we raise in this podcast again and again and again, where we're talking about the importance of that connection, the unsustainability of the focus on performance, and really having a product centric industry that is in the earliest stages of transitioning to a solution centric industry. And that means that everything needs to shift. And I love
Yeah,
what you said. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
no, I was going to say, I think that sometimes we may view our profession as unique, but the reality is that all of us have dealt with professional practitioners who are servicing us. For example, our doctors, our dentists, our lawyers, our accountants. And at what point do we decide to move on to a new relationship because we find the person on the other side of the desk or on the other side of the screen is not connecting with us on a human level? I think that's one of the reasons we find this great growth in concierge medicine as an example, because hospitals and medical centers are dealing with thousands of patients instead of a collective few with whom the doctors or the people on their staff can tune in. And so to develop this empathy, I think sometimes we have to ask the question, have relationships with us have ever been mismanaged? Are there people that we would rather not be doing business with, even if it's for our health or for our finance or for our legal issues, because we're dealing with that? So I think turning the tables on what one is experiencing himself or herself really makes a difference in how you might view the change in your own business.
I love the analogy so much to concierge medicine. And I'll just like make a little extension to that analogy where we actually use in our sales materials. We compare what we're doing at Nomi is we're giving you a tool that is going to move from the stethoscope to the MRI. And concierge medicine is actually that. People are getting much more, much deeper data, and that data is expensive to gather in concierge medicine. But we already know from a lot of testing that it can identify cancer multiple years ahead of time than if you weren't going to do that type of data gathering.
And in a
And I
way
think,
that
yeah,
in a way that's less intrusive.
yeah, in a way that's less intrusive and potentially life-saving, in many cases, where
Yeah,
if you catch it earlier, then the way that you're gonna react to that is totally different. And I think that analogy is so attuned to what we're doing at Nomi is when you have better structured data and the science behind the way we're gathering that data, then you're really acting more as a preventative layer to bad financial decision making, kind of in that same way that concierge medicine is doing to your physical health.
exactly.
Yeah, I love that. You and I have spoken before about the transition from the rainmaker model and somebody who just kind of carries the firm and is great at sales to the ensemble team model. And when you kind of think about that transition, and I want to go back to what you were saying earlier about the evolution from entrepreneurial like approach, I'll just call that scrappy startup FA to enterprise process heavy FA. How do you kind of relate those two things and transitioning away from a rainmaker to an ensemble team that has a lot better process and communication?
Well, there comes a point in all of our lives when we're doing things we shouldn't be doing. Sometimes in the beginning, we are assuming responsibility for every little piece of movement that has to occur within our practice. And we tend to lean into the things we do well. But there comes a point when we have to say we're either good at managing relationships, developing new business, providing deep, intensive advice to our clients, recognizing changes in circumstances, and then building out the development of the people within our organization so we can truly leverage what we're doing. And there's a reason for this that goes well beyond the growth of the business. Um, it's big news for a lot of people, but unfortunately, most advisors are mortal. They have this human element to them that their life cycle might be 30 or 40 years in this business. Meanwhile, they're attracting clients that may outlive them. And so the question is, once they kick the bucket, who's going to be taking care of those clients? So there's this fiduciary role, I almost think, that one has to contemplate. How will they ensure that the clients they've built this great relationship with will continue? And the only way this can happen is by developing other people or selling their business to someone who will care more than they do. And we can think of it as an ensemble or we can think of it as a business, but the notion of recognizing that there's a limit to our capacity and there's a limit to our skill set to serve clients properly will help us to think about building out a business beyond us. And so, to that point, one of the discussions I hear frequently is, we should hire more rainmakers. And the reality is that it's very much a team tackle in most cases today. There are people who are sourcing the leads. There are people who are engaging with the prospects. There are teams that are presenting the ideas and solidifying the relationships. And then there are those that are carrying on with the growth of the business in a way that clients begin to think this is an advisory practice that truly cares about its clients, and I'm going to refer my friends and contacts to these firms. That there's this community that they build with. So it goes beyond the whole notion of being a professional seller to being a professional buyer on behalf of your clients, from being a product advocate to being a client advocate, from being suitable to being fiduciary. All of these things are really the result of how you define that relationship with the clients going forward.
I love that. And I think so much of that transition, when you're looking at going from, call it sole practitioner entrepreneur to enterprise and becoming a client advocate, means that so much needs to change. Like maintaining all of that information in your head is not going to work if you have a broad business that relies on clear, consistent, scalable communication. And the benefits are so massive in terms of the efficiencies. And now, when you have a team, a business, we'll call it a team, a business anyway, that has different people with different functions that are excellent at achieving that one function, the advisor is freed up to do what their strengths actually empower them to do and become more of a CEO and kind of business owner as opposed to the do all end all sole practitioner. Is
Yeah,
that's what I'm hearing you saying?
it is, and this is not to cast aspersions on the sole practitioner. I think that, um, uh, frankly, solo practitioners make up the large number of advisors who are practicing today, but they are choosing a lifestyle practice over a business. And so there are natural limitations to their growth just because of that choice they're making. It's that analogy that I dreamed of owning a boat, I never dreamed of cleaning a boat. And it's
Yeah.
the same with people who said, I've never dreamed of owning a business because I don't want to deal with all the issues that are involved with that. So I think that once you resolve that conflict within yourself and you say, all right, I'm going to begin investing in something that extends me further into the market, that allows me to serve more clients. Then you have to build infrastructure around you, and you've already begun this process. This gestation period for your business is real at this point, and unless you want to revert back to what you were, you're going to have to continue investing. And the key investment is the development of other people that will help refine your approach to business.
Oh, what a great parlay into my next question. So, when we spoke earlier, you mentioned something that was super interesting, that younger advisors are increasingly expected to contribute to organic growth. Like you said earlier, everyone's looking for the rainmaker, but many haven't developed the confidence or conversational skills to do it effectively. Why do you think this is becoming an issue? And when you think about that talent development, what could you point our listeners? A lot of advisors listen to this. Where could you guide them to help with that development?
Yeah, I think this is a really tough uh, analysis to make because we all presumably were young once, and we all were confronted with the same challenges that our children and grandchildren are faced today. I think that in most cases, some of us probably found a mentor or a coach or a teacher or a leader that helped us to develop into what we became. Uh, Not everybody has natural instincts about developing new business relationships, let alone about being wise and a good communicator. So I think that this is probably a gap that exists within a lot of firms is, can you give as much attention to the people who work within your firm as you can to your clients? Can you develop that uh, recognition that all of us need to develop certain skills? And are we willing to make mistakes or allow the younger people to make mistakes just so that they can recognize what they're doing? Well, there was a study done some time ago. I think it was at Harvard that showed the firms that made mistakes tended to grow faster.
Huh.
And they dug into the data. What they found was that it wasn't the firms who made mistakes that grew faster. It was the firms that admitted mistakes that grew faster. And that this whole notion of allowing people to try and fail and then use it as a teaching moment, really became profound for the growth oriented businesses. So, I mean, I think that's one observation. The second is, of course, social skills are different now. Technology has both enabled and hampered the way in which humans develop. All that said, it's pretty easy for us to stereotype young people, just like our parents and grandparents did. I find it ironic as an example that when I was growing up, my parents really hated it that people had long hair and beards. And now I'm hearing people my generation saying, God, I hate it when they have long hair and beards. So it's you can't explain how these things happen over and over again. So, but I think that the dependency on technology may have uh, uh, created a limitation on social skills that individuals have, and the question is, how do they get beyond themselves and think about how they engage with people on a human level?
I think that's so wise. You mentioned something also in our prior conversation, and I jotted it down. You said something that human interaction is becoming more superficial. And that when you think about social media and the way that we'll just call it millennials and Gen Zs and even Gen Xers to some extent, the way they communicate and interact is very, very fast and sometimes very shallow. And it's kind of here and gone. And I think there's this hunger, this starvation for that type of connection you referenced earlier, building trust, building a real relationship. And one of the things I've seen in some of the firms that are growing the fastest is that those young advisors know how to really activate those digital channels in a way that is bringing people in. And there a lot of them, and this is just what I've kind of anecdotally witnessed, I don't have research behind it, they're just sharing vulnerably their own money story. They have this really great look in the mirror of, look, I made financial mistakes, and that puts me in a better position to help you so you don't. And it seems to be working. That's the kind of thing that I think social media really rewards.
Well, it does create a level of transparency.
Mhm.
And the question is whether that level of maturity can come along with it and a level of empathy that is reflected in it. Um, it's interesting that we use young people as the analogy, but I would say that non-digital natives, people of my generation, as an example, also use technology in a way that damages their ability for effective human contact, and that we're so easy to criticize or turn people on or turn people off based on those whole relationships. So this is a vehicle for uh, more efficient and sometimes more effective communications, but recognizing again that we are humans that have to relate on some level to what our anxieties or our goals or objectives, our relationships are. That doesn't go away, and so uh, the way in which I think Nomi and you have begun to develop this process for uncovering what people uh, want and expect and would like to discuss truly becomes a meaningful way to deploy technology.
Well, thank you for that. I very much appreciate it. What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at Nomi.com. One of the other quotes that I loved that you said is that business development is emotional intelligence. And when you talk about that, I want to use your word, the organic growth challenge. You said something much stronger. You said it's a malady. You said it's a chronic malady. So the organic growth chronic malady. When you think about that, you said that it needs to be framed differently, not just waiting for leads, but actively creating the market. How do you see that working in practice?
I think that one of the things we're finding is that, again, it relates to the technology discussion, but prospects are taking more time to search for the right connection,
Hmm.
and they'll do a lot of background check on you before they'll even reach out to you. But once they engage with you, they may test you in certain ways. And so, uh, having the patience as well as the persistence to engage with prospects in a way that's meaningful will help to differentiate you ultimately in the marketplace. And so, how do you demonstrate to prospects and clients that you recognize the issue is more than just their assets? It's not about the money they make, but the choices they make. How do you get to that point if you don't engage with them on the burning issues, the issues that they really reached out to you for in the first place? I think ultimately there's some catalyst for engagement. I hear this all the time from people who say, "Can you recommend an advisor to me?" And my first series of questions are, what's causing you to ask now? You're at a certain age where you've already done something, as you've already made money, you've already been investing. What's going on that you need to think about an advisor? And then what are the other elements that you'd consider successful in a relationship? And so when you begin asking those questions instead of saying, "Oh, this person's a great money manager," it isn't about them; it's about you and how you connect on that level. Really, I think makes a difference. So that's how I tend to view this process of knowing that it could take 12 months before somebody finally decides to hire an advisor. So what are you doing in the interim? Just waiting for the callback?
Yeah. And I think a lot of advisors, I'm hoping, are listening and being called to be more proactive and be more action oriented. One of the things that we're seeing in the market is that advisors are struggling to give prospects meaningful value. And really, the only way they're doing it today is download my ebook, download our thinking about the latest tax moves. They don't actually give anything to the prospect that helps them understand, how are you understanding what you really need? So when you and I come and meet, you know exactly what you're holding me accountable to. You're the boss. It's your money. And if you create that level of what you are holding me to, then we're going to have a more effective conversation. Here's a tool to help you do that. And there's so much science now, but we're so focused on the product. We're so focused on just read my thing in my blog about, my product that I'm trying to sell. There's this huge wide open space around give them value about themselves, help them better understand themselves so that you actually show up different. Um, I've seen some articles. Kit just recently put something out. Also, I think Meg was involved in it, our behavioral officer, that they are testing you and they are taking a much longer time to make a decision. And they're literally taking your financial plan or whatever you told them and putting it into AI and seeing, what is AI telling me about what you told me? Is that going to give you a passing grade or not?
Yeah, I think those are both great points. There's this whole idea of you're not selling them a product or process. You're delivering an outcome. And so when people suggest I download something, I might want to upchuck something. So I really would like to uh, have you take the time to engage with me a little bit on what it is that I should be thinking about. I mean,
Oh, I
let's
love that. That's a perfect soundbite there. I loved it. One of the things that you just shared a lot about is just scaling human understanding, that emotional intelligence component, that connection. It's not just operational efficiency. When you're looking at technology and how RIAs or enterprise advisors, where do you think th're underinvesting? Where do you think they should be putting more attention?
Yeah, it's interesting. Almost everything I'm reading about technology, and I know this is a unfair generalization, but many of the things I'm reading tend to focus on efficiency, effectiveness in the process, cost savings, the need for fewer people, all of these things that are supposed to save the advisor. But what would be interesting to me is to see more about how certain tools might enhance the advisor experience or how certain tools might enhance the client experience, as well as how it might enhance the operations or the efficiency of an organization. So, again, I never think of growth as a strategy. I think of growth as an outcome, and it depends on how you deploy technology to drive that growth. And so, I think going back to one of my earlier comments about the development of people on your team, this is an area where we probably could do more on technology to help us to measure, monitor, evaluate, and train individuals that we're attempting to groom to be leaders in the business themselves. And the same is true for clients, is that when we recognize they're migrating through a life cycle and the needs they have when they're early accumulators versus when they're late distributors really becomes a different set of issues that we have to be conscious of. And so, I think of a good example in the case of our own advisor, where when I retired from Pershing, even before that, I would say, but especially when I retired from Pershing, um, my wife and I decided quite seriously that one of the most important things for us was not to evaluate the money we make so much as the impact we make. And how do we develop a coherent uh, uh, philanthropic approach that uh, would allow us to evaluate whether we're making the impact we want to make? I could see technology as being a powerful tool that way as well. Not just am I using a donor advised fund or am I using my minimum and maximum distribution, but am I accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish? And one of the things to force us to do, instead of donating to hundreds of different organizations just to write a check, it was more about now we can see the organizations that we're impacting and we're engaged with them on a different level. And boy, would it be great to evaluate progress in some form as to whether this is something we want to continue to commit to.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think everything is so interwoven here. It's about what the money is for. It's about driving that connection, getting way more human. I want to come back to something you said before we wrap up. And you said, we're kind of facing this convergence of an advisor shortage, expanding technology, and also the changing of the operations of a business, how the actual business of wealth management is changing all at the same time. And I want to come back to one thing that I've heard a lot of very self aware advisors say to me is that they're struggling somewhat in their own self identity. They kind of see themselves and I spoke to an advisor this morning who said, I like just geeking out and looking at their assets, and I have a hard time with the connection piece. I want to be better at it. And they struggle. And so when you think about everything we've been talking about, continuity, personalization, scalable growth, the whole advisor relationship and preparing for the next generation of advisors to compete in a totally different environment than what has been seen over the last 40 years, is there a skill, a mindset that tomorrow advisors will need to develop that really impacts the way they see themselves?
Well, you've described the human condition, I think, quite articulately there, because I think the moment we self-reflect, the moment we recognize we're sometimes unfulfilled, we're not doing
Mm.
the things that we want to do. And I think that the power of the way in which the business is unfolding is that we realize that our best connections are not always the people who think like us and act like us and work like us, but are people who complement the way in which we function. And so it's great that people acknowledge what they love, and I think pursuing what they love to do, geeking out on financials and the assets, good for them. But the question now is if they're thinking beyond themselves and they're thinking about the role that they signed up for, which is helping their clients to achieve personal and financial fulfillment, then should they surround themselves with others who can enhance the way in which they approach clients? Not to diminish their role because it's going to be critical, but who else should be part of their team that engages with clients, that does the things that are so important? So I think that's one reason why I'm such an advocate for the ensemble concept or the it's not building a giant business, but building a meaningful business where uh, recognizing that the beauty of financial advice uh, is that the financial success that we as clients achieve as a result of it is very measurable. But the fact that you listen to me and you help me to achieve something more important, uh, that's what I'll remember, and that will be the thing that inclines me to refer clients to you.
Yeah. I love it. That was a great way to kind of wrap everything together with a bow. Um, and we always end with the same question, Mark. What is an instance in your life or a conversation you've had that totally changed your personal relationship with money?
Well, there probably were many. I think the fact that I started out in life without um, any appreciation for money. I couldn't spend it fast enough, and I didn't grow up with a financial background, ironically. But there were certain individuals who helped tune me into the idea that money was a vehicle for making decisions. So I think the first one was probably early in my career when I was a journalist and recognized that I was doing this all wrong and I had to get my life under control. And I happened to be a journalist covering this industry, so I was exposed to people who actually had wisdom about it. I think the second was the recognition that my dad and stepmother went into retirement totally unprepared to be retired, emotionally or financially, and that ended up being decades of subsidy to a couple of people that were important in my life. And I knew I didn't want to be in their shoes when it came my time. So I think on both ends of the spectrum, there are these examples very dear to me that made me think about money differently.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's amazing how for everyone I've ever had on this podcast, money is so personal and it's emotional. And the way we believe in money is so formed by all of the different experiences we've all had. And yet our industry is just now beginning to realize that it's been so number centric. And the emotions is what drives decisions. It is the emotions that is behind every single financial decision that anyone's ever gonna make.
Yeah, it surely is. And it's not about the possessions, that's for sure. So, well, I think that the mission that you're on to help the advisory community transform is great. There are many great examples in this business, and I think that what's always attracted me to support the profession is the level of empathy and understanding and compassion that so many individuals have that have truly transformed the lives of their clients. So that's rewarding.
Wow. Well, you have spent decades helping shape the way that the whole advisor profession shows up for the clients and the businesses they're building, not just operationally, but philosophically. And what stands out most is your belief that the future of wealth management isn't really not about products and portfolios. It's about helping people navigate increasingly complex lives with clarity, confidence, and purpose and impact. Your insights around ensemble teams, advisor development, human connection, creating intentional growth models are so relevant. Building businesses and recognizing that building a business is different than maybe just being really good at helping clients end to end. And so it's been very helpful for me and for everyone listening to understand how firms are evolving from personality driven practices to enduring businesses. And I think what's especially important is your reminder that while technology continues to accelerate, the firms that win are ultimately going to be the ones that become more human, not less. And is there any parting words for those young advisors, especially who are like, I love everything Mark had to say. I want to become an enterprise ensemble driving business. What would you tell that advisor?
Well, if you pick the right profession, just figure out how to make yourself grow within it. That's it.
I love it. And you got a lot of tips here in this podcast for our listeners. What do you think is going to matter most in the next era of wealth? I'd love to hear from you if you learned anything in this podcast. If you would like to share Mark's wisdom with your team, please like, share this podcast, post, rate it. We want to hear from you and want to hear your comments. What do you think matters most in the next era of advice? Better technology, better teams, better conversations, and most of all, better businesses. That is what we're all here to try to build that help our clients achieve their goals. Mark, thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you, Marva. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.